Today's video is brought to you by our good old friends over at Manscaped.com. Christmas came a little early at the Some Ordinary Gamers household, and now we're ready to show off our performance package. I am obligated to tell you that the Jingle Balls will actually thank you. Manscaped created the world's first all-in-one men's grooming kit that has you covered literally from head to toe. To start off, you got the premier Lawnmower 4.0 waterproof cordless trimmer with the built-in advanced skin-safe technology. Literally helps you reduce all those little scary accidents you could potentially have around the most sensitive regions of your body. It also has a cool LED light so you could literally sit in the dark and shave in absolute ambiance if you really wanted to. And here's a stocking stuffer for you, Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant and Crop Reviver Ball Toner Spray, which means once you're out of the shower and you've applied the goodies, you're about to have the freshest ball experience of your lifetime. I'm actually glad Santa came by, because have you ever tried pulling a nose hair by your bare fingers? It's not the most enjoyable experience, but Lord knows if you need to go to a job interview, you absolutely have to go through that pain. Not anymore though, because the Weed Whacker has 360-degree rotary blades and the same skin-safe technology from the trimmer itself. Manscaped's no longer below-the-waist grooming, buckos. In addition to all of it, you've got product for the good old toes themselves. Yes, the Shears 2.0 luxury 6-piece stainless steel nail kit, so you can groom them toes without any issues. Every guy out there needs to add Manscaped to their wish list this season, in my opinion. If you got a special man that's been extra good this year, make sure to get them that performance package by Manscaped. And you get it right now, you get 2 free gifts as well, the Shed Travel Bag and the Anti-Chafing Boxer Briefs. That's a gift within a gift. Giftception. So don't wait, go to manscaped.com and use our promo code to get 20% off plus free international shipping and 2 free gifts. Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar. Like most people who are ingrained in technology, I was watching some good old Linus Tech Tips one night. And I'm not going to look at a day ago. Linus appears to be playing with a little bit of a computer cock. But about a week ago, alright, Linus has basically been doing this thing called the Linux Gaming Challenge, where him and Luke on their side are basically running a whole challenge to see who can use Linux for like 30 days. Now, this has sort of drawn a little bit of a tizzy in the community. You know, you got a lot of people who are like, wow, these guys are stupid! How can they not figure out how to use the terminal? All right, calm down there, IT specialist god. And then you've got the other half going like, yeah, fuck Linux. And in this regard, I want to sit over here and basically talk about my experience. Ladies and gentlemen, according to the title of this video, don't use Windows. I don't like it, I dislike Windows, and I move away from it, okay? However, I understand people use Windows for one main reason. Because it's simple and it's easy. You install it and it's good to go. You can play the newest games, you can play the newest multiplayer games, you can do most of the things on a computer you ever wanted. However, with Linux, you're gonna have to walk around and sort of enter a bit of a technical minefield if you don't know what you're doing. I understand the value of Windows. It doesn't mean that I like to use it. Literally, as I was filming this video, if it's one thing that sends me to a blind gamer rage, it's the fact that even if you don't activate Windows, at least on 11 from my experience, you literally can't even change your sound output for some reason. Like, it's bad enough this dog shit installs Candy Crush Saga every time I update, and it's also worse that I need to activate a system for it. I'm not paying you whatever your service fee is to change sound outputs. I will switch to the Penguin. Now, despite me being more technically adept, I just want to sit here and sort of demystify a lot of things, okay? So I'm not going to sit over here and tell you to stop using Windows without a good, rational way out of it. And so today, we're going to be switching to good old-fashioned Linux. And I'm going to show you how to do it, the easier way to do it, and before any elitist jumps in here, which is a really great point, I'm just going to start off by saying this is like a get your feet wet, okay? This is like jump into the puddle for starters. Ladies and gentlemen, you can freely go into the deep end on your own at the end of it, okay? Let's get into the meat and potatoes. So to start off with, I'm going to just address one thing, and that's the elitism, okay? Now, the Linux community is great. Some of the best friends I've ever met is from that community. However, there is a small but incredibly vocal minority of Linux users who basically are like the goddamn vegans of computers, okay? Like out of there, people will not shut up of their love for Linux, okay? Some of these people will close their ears, sing la 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 la, and ignore all criticisms, okay? But to understand, Linux is not going to be an easy switch, okay? Like many things in life, if you completely uproot how you've been doing something, you're probably going to be spending some time relearning a few deals, okay? It's kind of like switching to a Mac, okay? You just have to learn how to use a Fisher-Price computer for a little bit. But with Linux, I have a great meme that I always show people, okay? And it's this one: Linux users installing a web browser. It's a very simple meme of somebody typing in a million terminal commands to install a web browser, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, this is a joke. That does not stop people from going, sudo dnf install Firefox. Oh my god, this was so hard, I need to rest. Yeah, maybe we should learn how to take jokes, okay? Audience, what does Linux and ice cream have in common? A lot of flavors. Yes, like ice cream, there's a few good solid standouts like vanilla, chocolate, strawberry. And sometimes you get to weird flavors like Old Soggy Diaper, okay? Now to understand, some people like Old Soggy Diaper, and while that may be good for some people, you're probably going to want to stick with the tried and true classics like vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, the reason I'm making this comparison is when you look up Linux, you'll find out that the very big common word that we use is distro, short for distribution, okay? This is the various flavors that Linux comes out in, okay? To understand, let's go to a site called DistroWatch, okay? DistroWatch mentions a billion different variants of Linux, okay? You've got Euro Linux, you've got Clonezilla, you've got Deepin, you've got Endless, you've got Alpine, you've got Q4OS and UB ports and Slackware. You might be wondering, okay, I'm already confused right now. Which one do I download? Do not Google top Linux distros, okay? The reason why you shouldn't Google this is, ladies and gentlemen, frankly, you get into what we call SEO hell. Let me just give you an example of one of these websites. This is Tech Radar. No real issue against it, but here's Linux for beginners, mainstream, and advanced users. Let's look at their top Linux distro picks. So number one is Nitrix, okay? Reasons to buy. You don't have to buy Linux. Don't buy it, okay? Don't fall for that. Easy customizations. Reasons to avoid. Documentation via blogs. You know, for somebody just jumping into Linux, this is a weird thing to start saying. Maybe you could have said, maybe it's easy to game on it. Maybe it comes with all the software prepackaged. Maybe it's really good. I think people who are trying to get into Linux care less about customizing it first than getting their feet wet, okay? Use of app images? What are you trying to say over here, okay? Like, you think somebody jumping into it is going to know what an app image is first off? I mean, they kind of do describe it later on, but still, let's go further, okay? Then it's Zorin OS, best distro for Windows users. Yeah, because I guess it looks like Windows, meaning it's just as good. All right, congratulations. Then you've got Pop OS, which is hybrid graphics, special image for NVIDIA users, keyboard navigation. I'm pretty sure you can keyboard navigate on most of these distributions, if anything, guys. Again, what kind of pros and cons are we dealing with? A whole different story. So to understand, let's get back into it. So, ignoring all the bullshit you find on the internet, I'm going to give you 3 tips, okay? Number 1, make sure it's popular. With popularity comes a lot of people working on the forks, okay? That means, look, I know how tempting it must be to have Among Us OS. That's definitely a viable option, but for instance, people are probably developing Ubuntu more faster and more securely than they are developing Among Us OS. No shade towards Among Us, but ladies and gentlemen, you want to pick something that's popular, okay? Something like Ubuntu, something like Manjaro, something like Pop OS, something that you've seen in the community regulating around, because there's always going to be people who are working on this project and moving it forward. You don't want to pick a dead branch of Linux that doesn't get updates, or at least at most security updates at all either, simply because you actually want a usable experience, not a dead experience. Point number 2. There is no point number 2. I had you right there. There's no 3 secret tips. There's only one. Just make sure it's popular, make sure it's well supported, and have a good time. So to understand, I'm going to take you on a magical journey. Let's get started with Linux, okay? So you want to go to ubuntu.com, okay? This is one Linux distribution that I'm recommending to somebody brand new to the entire situation. Before we begin, I know there's somebody in the comment section going, how dare you pick Ubuntu? My distro's better. Listen, I get it. I understand. The only reason I'm going with this is because we're trying to bring people into the situation. If somebody tells you Ubuntu is too easy, you tell them to stick their head out of their asshole, because at the end of the day, you're trying to learn and get started. There are other distributions. For instance, I use Arch, okay? Arch, you start off with a command line, you install the whole thing yourself, and it's very much, you know, sort of a modular system that you develop if you're a power user and you know what you're doing. It's not hard to get up and running, but this is considerably easier than that. And the reason I'm picking this is because it's easier and it's well supported. And for somebody just starting out, this is going to be a great way for you to begin learning. So anyways, once you're on their webpage, go to download, and over here you want to make sure you get desktop, not server. You want to make sure you get 21.10. You could get long-term support, but I usually go with the newest thing right out of the batch. I like the newer stuff. I'm sure you will too. So once you're doing it, you're going to download this and save the file, and eventually you'll have an ISO. Now you want to get a standard flash drive. It doesn't matter how big it is, as long as it's 8 gigs, you're fine. Then you're going to go to a place called Balena Etcher, okay? Balena Etcher is a ISO writing tool for these kind of operating systems. So you download this tool and you basically start running it right over here. And this is cross-platform. So if you're on Microsoft, if you're on Windows, Mac, or Linux, it works no matter what. So you pick your ISO file here, you select your flash drive here, and you click flash here. It basically takes like 10 minutes, and once you're done, you get a brand new, shiny, juicy flash drive. So now it's time to boot into the OS. So all you have to do is basically stick your flash drive in, power on your computer, and when you see your like BIOS screen, just tap F7, F8, F9, F10, delete, whatever your boot menu key is, and select the USB drive option. And then you'll be booted into the live CD. One thing I will definitely tell you is when you boot into it, depending on what graphic card you have, you may end up running into some issues. Right now, I'm running an AMD graphic card, which means all of my stuff is basically built into Linux right now, part of being open source. But if you're on Team Green like NVIDIA, you might run into a couple problems, okay? It might be using an open source driver that frankly isn't up to snuff. But if you boot into the main menu, you should ultimately make it to this main screen. Now, I've been using this the entire time, all right? This is the live CD, where you can sort of play around with Linux before you truly commit to it. But we're putting on the ring, we're getting married, we're getting hitched. Let's click install Ubuntu 21.10. So here's the installer. Now, if you've installed Windows, this is not going to be difficult. I'll walk you through it, okay? So pick your language. I'm English. All right, let's go continue. You want to pick your keyboard layout and everything, so I'm English US. Go ahead and continue. Now here you can pick normal or minimal install. If you don't want to have all the beautiful web browsers, utilities, office software, games, and media players, you can hit minimal. We're going to go with normal, okay? And now over here, you can also do install third-party software for graphics and Wi-Fi hardware and additional media formats. This is ideal, and you should probably click this because you're going to do it anyways at some point if you're using this for the long term. So yeah, you can also do download updates while installing Ubuntu. So if you do want to update the system, it'll just save you time anyway. So hit continue, and it'll prepare all the drivers, and we're going to move to the next step. In the meantime, while that's doing it, something you can't do with the Windows installer is play some goddamn stick RPG while it's happening. Like, you can't do this with the Windows 10 installer. You have to sit there and wait for the progress bar to go across. But I can play some good old stick RPG. So what you're going to do is when you get to this screen, install Ubuntu or erase disk. You want to make sure you go to erase disk. The first option is there to help you dual boot, but we just want to get in and install Linux, okay? So hit erase disk and go hit continue, and here you're going to have to pick which disk you're going to go with. So I know that I'm going to install into a 500 gigabyte SSD that I have plugged in. And here I've got 500 GB SanDisk Extreme 55 AE. I know this is what it is, but make sure so you don't format something and lose your files. So here you can hit install now, and without a doubt, you can walk away because now it's officially installing. So at this point, go make yourself a cup of coffee, have a good time. It will ask you this error, it will tell you this warning, it will destroy all data. Hit continue and go along, all right? And here it's going to actually wait. Hold on. It will ask you where you live. I'm going to pick Toronto because that's where I live. Your name. And here you're going to type in your name. So we're going to type in Muta. And your computer name, Muta, system product name. You can actually just call this whatever you want. I'm going to call this Muta-Linux. All right? Pick a username and then pick a password. I'm going to go with 123 just for the sake of this nonsense, okay? It is telling me it's a short password. I kind of don't care. Hit continue and just go with it. So here it's already installing it and it's having a good time. At this point, you could walk away and again, come back to this when it's all over. Okay, so here we are. You're probably seeing a purple screen. I'm signing on. It's actually detected this monitor as the first one, so it started up. Gonna skip it. Give me 1 second. Let me just change the displays to the main screen so we can actually see Linux in real time. All right, so here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We got Ubuntu ready to go. It's all fired up and it's all here. So you get a nice little fancy welcome screen which basically tells you, would you like to have some privacy? Yeah, I don't need location services. Get out of here. And compared to Windows's, can we get a torch up your rectum to see the size of your anal No, you don't have to. It's just location services. Disable it, okay? And then immediately it says, hey, would you like some software? I would just like to begin, okay? Let's hit done. So here's the main screen, and it all took a record amount of maybe like 5 minutes to get going, okay? Ubuntu has released new software, so here's the update screen. And compared to Windows' updates, I like to blank out everything. I'm gonna walk you through the update process on Ubuntu. Usually, if it finds something underneath these very user-friendly versions of Linux, it'll just tell you. So all you have to do is effectively hit install now. And over here, it's going to download it, and that's it. It's done. It might ask you for a super user password, which we'll just see in a second once it's done downloading all of these updates. Ah, look at that. It's installing. You might look at that like, look at this hacker font text. This is just the terminal shell. Basically, what you would open up a terminal for to update anyways can all easily be done within some of these front-end GUI tools. So don't let any of it surprise you. Don't let any of it weird it out. This is basically how it works. Look at that. The software on this computer is up to date already right there. Bam, hit OK. There you go. You have an updated distribution. And the best part is there's no interruption on your end. So now we might be wondering, but Muda, how do we do anything? Now, to understand, the first thing you should do, especially if you're like an NVIDIA user, is open up the show applications and type in additional or just add. And as long as you see this additional driver key, hit it. And basically over here at this point, you definitely want to make sure that you have like proprietary drivers. If you want a game on this software, for instance, my 3090 is currently using Nouveau, which is open source, it's fine. But if you want a game, you want to eventually move to these proprietary ones. So in this case, you probably want to go to the highest NVIDIA driver. So it's driver 495 by NVIDIA. So you just want to enable it that way. I don't need to because I'm not using my NVIDIA card. I have an AMD card right here. So to understand, you might be like, but Muda, what can I do now? Well, there's plenty of software that you can get into, and it's really your choice, okay? This stuff doesn't really come with the bloat that you would expect from Windows anyways. It runs incredibly efficiently. To understand, let's go and install a browser, okay? Right now, we already have Firefox, but let's say you're like, Muda, I want Google Chrome. So here you're gonna go to Google Chrome, all right, like you would normally, hit OK, and you want to download Chrome. Now, the reason we went with Ubuntu and the reason I had such a hard-on for this is because I said when I was telling you, hey, pick the one that people are using. Because if you pick the Linux distribution that most people use, the software and the development is more geared to that end. I'm not saying that you can't get away with other distributions. It's just you're going to have to do a little bit more on your own to get it working. So here we can pick deb or RPMs. Because you're on Ubuntu, your package manager is an apt package manager. So you download .deb files. That's your package files. RPM are for people using Fedora or OpenSUSE-based Linux distributions. If you're on Arch, you're on different stuff as well. So here we're going to download the 64-bit deb file. And as we download it, we're just going to save it somewhere on our system, download it. I'm going to walk you through the simplest ways of installing it, okay? So here you open up where the install is. You click on this little page right here. You click on this little file, and a package manager should pop up. So at some point it'll show up. Maybe it's just imaging because I've used it for the first time. Here it is. So it's going through a bit of a loading thing. Google Chrome Stable, the web browser from Google. All right, so you just hit the green install button and you pass it your sudo password, which is basically your admin password. And here you go, installing 20%, 80%, and bam, it's done. If it reminds you of anything, it should kind of remind you of your cell phone, the way you install apps, because generally the way you work with this operating system is this is one of the ways you install, the most common way. But once it's installed, all you have to do is open up your applications, and there should be Google Chrome. So bam, right there, make it the default browser. You got it, baby. Automatically send you just usage statistics? No, Google, go home. You're drunk. But here is Google Chrome. So if you ever wanted to waste your RAM, here's the best web browser for that. But now you might be like, but I'm a gamer, Muda. I want a game. See, for me, Linux is already there, all right? If you're doing stuff in a web browser like Google Docs, watching YouTube videos, some Netflix, the comparison to Windows is 1-to-1. Not only do you have a faster operating system, but it just works better for all that stuff anyways. But let's get to the real meat and potatoes. Let's say I'm a video editor. Well, there's a couple of video editing tools out there like Kdenlive, or if you're a professional, DaVinci Resolve. If you're somebody who uses Adobe be like me, go home, polls closed, this isn't your turf right now. But let's say you're a gamer. Let's make this a gamer operating system. Well, like most gamers, we're gonna need a chat application. And for this, I use Discord, okay? Like most degenerates out there. And the reason, again, we went with Ubuntu is now that we're on their page, they have a nice download for Linux system. So a lot of the popular stuff is getting a Linux pick. But here we're going to download the deb file. The tar.gz file is more for everybody who's using other variants of Linux. But since we're on Ubuntu, let's take advantage of it. Download that Debian file, and then all deb file, keep it, and launch it. And bam, here it is. Opens up your package manager, hit install, type your password, authenticate, you're good. Can we fire up the Discord? It just showed up. Bam! We're now downloading and getting Discord. It's fast as fuck, baby. Shit. In fact, let me sign on into it right now. Where's Discord? There's only 2 types of Discord users, both that belong in prison. Hell yeah, boys! We got a little bit of we got a way to talk. Now you can communicate with all of your gamer friends as you would expect. Okay, so Discord's up. I'm going to stop blurring the screen, and I'm actually going to quit Discord. Otherwise, you're going to hear bloop, bloop, bloop the entire time. You might be like, Muda, can I get rid of this creepy crackhead koala? Yes, you can. Right-click, change the background, and just go with whatever you want. The stars have never looked brighter. And speaking of the stars, we got to game a little bit, friends. So here's where the real gaming is going to happen. You're probably going to want to use a, gaming client software. And the biggest one right now is Steam. So you go to Steam, and here you go. Now, you might be wondering, okay, Muda, while you're doing that, what about Epic Games Launcher? What about Origins? There are ways to get that going through software like Lutris. However, it's not perfect. The reason Steam works is that it is built for Linux as well. So again, download the Steam deb file, save it, and install it as you normally would. Now, you might be wondering, okay, Muda, what about this dreaded command line people have been talking about on the internet? Well, you're probably going to come across it at some point. Like any boss in a video game, at some point you're going to have to face it. So here you're going to open up Terminal, which is a terminal shell. And in the terminal shell, you have access to basically doing a bunch of PowerShell-y things. Now, imagine it like this, okay? There's probably a million windows you have to flip through to do some power user thing on Windows or Mac. With Linux, you get the exact same experience, however much simplified if you know your command line. Over time, you will pick up the strats, but for now, let's go through something basic. Let's say I want to install something to look at my system stats, right? So neofetch. So the way that we're going to do this, we're going to do the word sudo, which is super user. Okay, we're going to be passing a super user command. You're going to need to do this if you're installing a full package. Then you do apt, which is your package installer for, Ubuntu, install, and then type neofetch. So these 4 words, once it's enter, then hit 123 your password, and here it's going to ask you, hey, we found your files. But after this operation, 55.5 megs of additional disk space is used. So just hit yes, it's going to download your files, and it's going to install it all for you. In the meantime, you can choose to do everything else, like log into your Steam account. All right, Steam's firing up. So while Steam's firing up, we can actually look at my stats. So this is a computer that I'm using, and as you can see right now, Linux is bringing on the pain. We've got Ubuntu, we've got kernel 5.13, which isn't the newest. Newest one is like 5.16 or 15. You're probably going to come across it if you use a rolling release distro like Arch, which is basically updated almost real time. This is updated in like waves. So you're going to have Ubuntu 21. It's going to upgrade next year like a Mac install or a Windows install usually would. So here I've got packages, and I've got like 1,700 packages in the system. All right, usually in a less bloated installation, it's going to be in the few hundreds. Then you've got, your desktop environment, but here I've got my CPU, which recognizes just fine. Ryzen 9 5950X, and both my graphic cards, the 6900 XT and the RTX 3090. Here's a pro tip. If you are on Linux and you are an AMD graphic card user, you're going to have a much more easier time than NVIDIA, simply because NVIDIA is really hard on about proprietary drivers, and AMD is very open source friendly. And there's a world of easeability between the two systems. If you are on Linux and you want to use the most compatible graphic driver, AMD is probably going to be your best bet. So inside my list, there are plenty of games that actually natively run perfectly fine on Linux. However, in this case, when we want to play Cyberpunk Valhalla Bartending Waifu, we just install it like we normally would. Because it's a Linux version of a game, we don't really have to worry about too many problems of compatibility. It should just work out of the box. In fact, we'll be able to see it real quickly. So hit play, launch the game, and here it is, launched on a different window. So bam, as you would expect, the game runs just fine. So it launched up. This is the Linux version of Valhalla Cyberpunk Bartending Waifu Action, all available. But we're going to close this off, and we're going to talk about what if you wanted to run a Windows game. Now, there are plenty of options, but Steam makes it really easy. So, for instance, you can hit up Steam, go to your settings, and right where it says Steam Play, all you have to do is enable Steam Play for other titles, and you can pick Experimental Proton or the most recent stable version. I'm going to go with Experimental, hit OK. You're going to be asked to restart Steam, and Steam's going to download Proton. So you might have heard of Proton. Proton is basically Valve's way of trying to run PC games on Linux. Okay, so the way that they're doing this is through something called Wine, DXVK, and various other technologies. How these technologies work is they translate the Windows call to Linux in real time. And this also involves things like graphics. So for instance, DXVK is brought in to translate graphic calls of DirectX 11 and potentially 12 to Vulkan, which is the open-ended graphic layer out there, okay? So this is basically a lot of computer magic happening to make your Windows gaming experiences easier. Now, you might have also heard about anti-cheats. Valve is working with BattleEye, Easy Anti-Cheat, and various individuals to literally allow anti-cheats on Linux, which would be a huge bonus. Right now, the most popular games do not work because of anti-cheat issues. If Valve can bring this to the party, then you can start to play games like Rainbow Six Siege, hopefully, if the developers allow it, and other big titles like Halo Master Chief Collection, maybe even Halo Infinite, all underneath Linux. Now, of course, with the Steam Deck and its promises, it might actually be closer than you would expect. And with the amount of involvement Linux gaming has gotten, remember, we used to play Halo 1 and be impressed that it ran. This is a big deal. If you asked me 5 years ago if Linux was this impressive, I wouldn't be able to recommend it. But now, it literally took us less than an hour to get a Linux distribution working flawlessly with gaming right now. So, for instance, Resident Evil 2 Remake is one of my favorite games, and the fact that it runs flawlessly, maximum settings, 5K underneath my Linux distribution, is absolutely jaw-droppingly great. It runs out of the box, no issues, because of Valve Steam Proton. I can also use Proton to download Cyberpunk 2077 and play that on my actual system through GOG's launcher and using Lutris, which allows me to expand my gaming beyond you could expect. And there are some pretty cool gamer tools. You might be wondering, okay, Muda, besides gaming, can I even put in things like overlays? Yes, you can. It's actually quite easy. There's something called Mango HUD that you can basically just download, and you can install, get it running going, and it's absolutely piss easy to get it enabled on almost any Steam game. And it gives you some pretty good stats. Beyond that, there's also really good support for older games. If you're playing something like Mirror's Edge, for instance, that actually has old school libraries like PhysX, where you can get some cool physics effects going on, it actually installs just like you would a Windows game. Same prompt and everything, all underneath Proton, and you can have an absolutely amazing time replaying this game. Virtual reality is one of them. But I will say, if you're going into the world of VR, it's probably advisable that you walk into virtual reality with something from Valve. I know Oculus stuff might seem tempting from a price perspective, but given how VR and how restricted some things are, it does become an issue. Oculus has a Windows app. However, going to Linux, it doesn't natively support it at all, which again is a big problem if you're trying to get it running on PC for VR. Valve stuff, great. Facebook stuff, Meta stuff, absolutely not. Emulation is basically all the way there on Linux anyways. If you want to run the same emulators on Linux that you were running on PC anyways, or Windows, you're going to have a fine time. Dolphin is there, PCSX2 is there, RPCS3, everything under the book is available. RGB is going to be your one main concern in this situation because with Linux, a lot of the third-party software, like for instance my SteelSeries stuff, just does not exist on Linux, nor does it work. There are workarounds, but it becomes more of a headache than it's worth in my opinion. One of my all-in-one coolers, for instance, has a software on Windows that works just fine. However, you have to rely on like third-party software to even get half the functionality underneath Linux. It's getting better, but if you're like an RGB hound, it's still so far away from the mark in my opinion that if that's their make it and break it, I wouldn't switch over. But then again, in my opinion, it's a small sort of deal. Again though, this doesn't mean that the experience is flawless. You're going to run into issues. This distribution I'm only recommending to you is because it is that easy to get it running. And you can do power user stuff with it too. Let's say you wanted to run virtual machines, pass graphic cards through, do all the power stuff. You can 1000% do it with Ubuntu and do it with ease as well. So don't let anybody knock on you for playing on an easy Linux distribution. That's not the hardest thing. The fact is, if you can get this running and you can use it around and realize that maybe you don't need Windows, this might be a juicy sterling option. However, Windows has some benefits to it. Let's say you're a Game Pass subscriber. You're probably going to be needing Windows to run Windows UWP apps. So unfortunately, in that regard, Microsoft, through software, might still be relevant for years on end. That said, though, the option for a competitive other second choice is there, and it's Linux. And you know, I've seen these videos pop up from time to time, but I really wanted to make a video where I can talk about the ease of use, because really the hardest thing about Linux is trying to get somebody to use it once, trying to make it look like it's not built for programmers. The reality is you're going to be using the terminal at some point. You're going to be getting your feet wetter than what I've already shown you. But this is your first step into it. You got Discord running. You got to play some video games. You got to watch some Netflix. Now the world is yours. You finally jumped in. The tutorial phase is over, and you do what you have to do, baby. That being said, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am out.